geek. Cleveland and the geek. Talking baseball every week. Because the Cleveland and the geek.
And welcome to Cleveland and the Geek, presented by Stack Brewing, family owned and operated, now in a liquor store near you. I'm John Bonus for Twins Daily. With me, Aaron Cleveland of the Edge.
This is our official Twins 2026 season preview episode.
It's the official one.
Official, no, except no substitute.
If we do any other season previews, those are not the official ones. This is the official one.
If someone tries to sell you a Gleeman and the Geek Twins season preview, out
look
of like
for the certified little stamp on it.
Yeah, like out of the back of a truck or in an alleyway, and there's a box, and it doesn't.
That's not official. That's a good
look
point.
Inside it. That's just there's a brick in a box, and it's not the same. We got a lot of like news and notes, roster stuff is starting to come into form. So we're gonna talk about that, and then we're just gonna talk some bigger picture stuff and make predictions and over unders and all that for the Twins. Probably second half of the show. This could be a long show. I know I could say that at the start of every show, but we should get a button bar Aaron saying this could be a long show. Anyway, truly big picture. Despite what you'll probably hear today on this official season preview, in terms of very little optimism about the 2026 Minnesota Twins on the field, maybe John disagrees with me. We haven't really, I don't know. We
haven't done our over-under segment yet, which is coming up. We should tell people that. But if you were tuning in today expecting the over-under, which we often do this week, we have moved that to Patreon because we just got too much of the stuff to talk about.
Yeah, there's too much roster stuff. This would be an 8-hour show if we did that. But I think I have a pretty good sense of where you stand, having talked to you 2 to 3 times a week for the last 5 months during the offseason. I would hope so. Even as not the greatest listener, I think I have a sense. But still pretty happy that there's going to be baseball on Thursday.
Yes.
Like, I bad baseball is better than no baseball. And, you know, I don't have much faith in the Twins being a winning team or competitive, however you want to look at it in 2026. Spoiler alert. But there's still going to be good moments. There's still going to be good players. There's still going to be a lot of, in my opinion, and I said this last year, and I think I was definitely right last year. They may be good. They may be bad. They're definitely going to be interesting because I think the setup for what happens if things go badly again this year is another sell-off, most likely, with some pretty, maybe even bigger names. Which we'll get to later in the show.
We should also mention one of those great moments is going to be opening day at Twins at Stack Brewing, our presenting sponsor, where Twins Daily Social Club will be gathering on Thursday, including, I presume, your significant other.
He'll be there, yeah, I'm sure.
So stop twinsdailysocialclub.com to grab yourself. If you get a ticket, you get a free winter meltdown pint glass for showing up. So if you RSVP ahead of time.
What details on twinsdaily.com?
Twinsdailysocialclub.com.
Okay. And if things go well, obviously, which there's always the possibility. I wrote this morning on the Athletic how pessimistic I was and how we'll get into this, but the projection systems and over-unders are remarkably low for the Twins, even by their standards. It's been basically a decade since the expectations in terms of projections were this low. And each of the last 2 times, 2017, which is when they fired Terry Ryan off 100-something losses and replaced him with Derek Falvey. And then 2 years earlier, 2015, when they fired Ron Gardenhire after 4 90-loss seasons in a row and replaced him with Paul Molitor. Both of those years, at this time in those years, the over-under was lower in 2015 than it is now, and the projections from Fangraphs and Baseball Prospectus were lower than they are now. And in both of those seasons, they had winning records, including in 2017 making the playoffs with 85 wins.
Yeah. And in 2015, they're in it until the last weekend.
Right.
Yeah, it was amazing.
They narrowly missed. Now, I don't know that a decade later that's meaningful in terms of being predictive, but all that to say, projections are wrong all the time. Right. Lord knows we're wrong all the time, especially John, but occasionally me, are wrong all the time. So, we'll see. That's the beauty of baseball truly is in the annual nature of it. The wait till next year, hope springs eternal, clean slate, et cetera, et cetera. Talk to me in mid-April. I might have a different view of that. But right now, on Monday, March 23rd, Yeah, bring it on. Let's go. I'm sick of sitting on my couch. That's not really true. I don't really get sick of that. But you mentioned on the Patreon side, last call on this for people who aren't subscribed, who listen to the free version, which is fine every week. We'll continue to do that most Fridays throughout the season. You'll get this show on podcast form and also available on YouTube in video form, so you can look at how handsome we are. But if you want more of this, we typically
if you want to not see how handsome we are,
right? That also. I could have made so much money off women throughout my life. Pay me to not have to look at me. Anyway,
if you want to not be distracted by our gorgeous visage.
That's an interesting way to say that. But so in addition to the Friday show, which is free, we typically do Monday and Wednesday shows, usually at minimum 2 per week, exclusively for Patreon. Those are commercial-free episodes. We do interviews. We just had Derek Shelton on the show not too long ago. We do mailbags where we answer listener questions. We do deeper dives on stuff. We would love to have you join us for the entire season. And if you do, you can sign up for an annual subscription at patreon.com, Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. You get 20% off. From now until the first pitch on opening day, the deal will shut down. So go sign up now. 20% off means you're paying, I think last year it ended up being like 65 cents an episode or something like that. That essentially means you get 2.5 months each year for free, which is essentially like you get the off season for free. You ride with us all season. Marnie Gellner just signed up for the Patreon because she's going to be back in the mix, hosting pre and post game shows.
She also did not want to be distracted by our gorgeous visages.
Yes, I wonder. She's always handing me brown paper bags, and I wondered what the reason. I thought maybe for lunch or something like that, but I'm starting to wonder. Have something to do with how I look. Okay, so there's that. Patreon.com/Gleeman. And by the way, if you're an existing Patreon subscriber on the monthly membership, you can very easily switch over in settings, and you might as well get the 20% off. Take our money. We'll give you money back. Okay. Let's talk first and foremost about some of the things that have been revealed about the roster plan. There's still more to come. We're still, 72, 80 hours away from opening day, something like that. So there's a possibility that they're kind of kicking the can down the road as far as they can with some of these utility infielder, a couple of spots in the bullpen, maybe in part, maybe because they're really going down to the wire with the decision. In part, maybe because they're trying to make a trade or they're hoping to make a signing of someone who was released from another team's camp or maybe a waiver claim. That stuff, when you're dealing with the last few spots on the roster, particularly a team where those spots, in my opinion, are not that strong, the waiver wire starts to look pretty good. And a lot of veterans, as we're going to talk about the Twins releasing some veterans from minor league deals, dozens and dozens of guys, probably hundreds, were released in camps across the league. So the Twins might try to swoop in at the last second and grab one of those guys. But so let's go over what we know so far. Number one, no surprise at all, Joe Ryan has been named the opening day starter. That basically was going to happen as soon as he didn't leave camp to play in the WBC, because playing in the WBC would have changed his schedule and had them kind of have to juggle some things for the opening series in Baltimore. He didn't do that, so he will be the opening day starter. That's obviously a no-brainer on every possible level. It would, if Pablo Lopez were healthy, I think that's an interesting debate to be had of who warranted that, given that Ryan was the All-Star last year, but unfortunately Pablo's injured. The other thing we've learned about the rotation is that the number 5 spot will be held by Mick Abel, who, if you've listened to the Patreon, certainly we've kind of ramped up our discussions of him throughout camp as he's looked more and more impressive. Both from like a stuff standpoint, from a number standpoint. I think he has 22 strikeouts and 3 walks. The walk number being the key because the stuff is always there. It's just, can he throw strikes? And then the other thing is Zebby Matthews, it maybe didn't get talked about as much by us because we were very focused on Ober's declining velocity. But Zebby Matthews' raw stuff was down noticeably in his last couple of outings late in camp. I mean, he was still throwing 94.
Right.
But if you remember last year in camp, he was throwing 98, 99, and then throughout the season, he averaged 96, 97 with the fastball. So he had some unimpressive outings late in camp. His raw stuff seemed down. There's no indication that he's injured, although he had the shoulder problems last year in the second half. But I think all those factors, Abel was just really good, and Matthews was not impressive. And they had the ability to give the 5th spot to either of those guys and send the other one to AAA because they both had options, and they decided it was Matthews. a little bit of a surprise in terms of what we thought coming into camp,
Yeah.
but definitely not a surprise as of, let's say, 10 days ago. I think
Yeah.
that's how I viewed it.
I think we were taking a look at Abel and we basically said, well, we feel like he's got a 50% chance of making the roster one way or the other. Now, I would have still thought it was going to be Zebby Matthews at that point. I thought they would stick with chalk, so to speak, coming in there, in part because Zebby Matthews, at least by midway through camp, he actually was throwing 97, 98, right? The declining velocity kind of happened here recently, which suggests maybe he's kind of battling through something right now. But yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised that they went that direction. I thought they would stick with Zebby in part because he's the devil they know versus the devil they don't know in some ways. He was somebody that was on the roster. They certainly have high hopes for him. He was in the same way that Abel stuck out this year at camp, Zebby stuck out last year at camp. And I thought they'd want to see where he is. But I also think that there's a decent chance that we see Zebby Matthews before the end of April somewhere in this rotation. I mean, especially if he reestablishes velocity with whatever he's kind of going through right now.
Yes.
And by the way, I also don't. I mean, he was effective before. Not effective. He was the year before he started throwing 97 or 98. He made it all the way from low A to the majors. Like, there's no reason to think that he can't also be effective at 95 miles per hour as opposed to 97 or 98 miles per hour. So,
yeah, but yeah. First of all, he hasn't been effective at 98 miles.
Well, in major leagues, he is not. Right.
He's got a 6 ERA basically for his career. So I wonder. I mean, I agree with what you're saying in that we're going to see whether it was Abel getting sent to AAA or Matthews, that 6 starter, the kind of on call in the AAA St. Paul rotation guy. We go through this every year. We focus so much, and keep this in mind as we talk about even the bench spots and stuff. We focus so much, everyone does, on the opening day roster. And the reality is, more years than not with the Minnesota Twins, not only does the opening day roster change significantly by the end of April, it usually changes by the end of the first series. Somebody gets hurt, somebody needs to be sent down, and especially with starting pitching. I mean, the idea that you're going to get through the season with 5 starters is absolutely not the case. The reality is you're going to need 8, 9, 10 starters. And so this number 6 guy, after losing Lopez and with Festa's situation in flux, and honestly with Bailey Ober, a big, huge, literally and figuratively question mark. That 6 guy is going to be up, I would definitely say, by the end of April. What I do wonder, though, I mean, Zebby Matthews is 26. He's got parts of 2 seasons in the majors. He's now been passed over by Mick Abel, which is fine. But I wonder if they had a healthy Lopez or they had a healthy Festa, let's say, even at AAA, would Matthews start to convert to the bullpen? Now, it's probably a moot point if he's not feeling 100% and not throwing his best anyway. Right. Moving to the bullpen is not going to solve that. But I just wonder, like, if not now, when with him? He's 26, got 150 innings in the majors. This is like his 3rd camp where he's been a prominent factor, or at least someone to watch. But I think they can't really put that in motion, even if that's something they've considered, because then who would be the next starter in waiting at AAA? Then you're down to like Andrew Morris, and their rotation depth has vanished so quickly from this could be a strength not only for the team but relative to the league to, well, now they have 1 extra starter and we're not even sure he's 100% healthy. And by the way, their second veteran guy, Bailey Ober, we're not sure what's up with him either. So, but yeah, we're going to see all of them. It's partly why I don't want to overpromise on this, but you're not going to see us get incredibly worked up about this guy beat this guy for the 25th spot on the team, because 2 weeks from now that's going to change. Like the nature of the season will necessitate moves and decisions with injuries, with playing time. Sometimes you just enter the season thinking something's going to work out one way in terms of, versus a lefty, this guy plays versus a right. And then you realize it's not functional that way. You need to change it. Sometimes a reliever has a couple bad outings and you go, you know what? No, we're not into him. Sometimes a starting pitcher goes down or needs a break and Zebby Matthews is right back up. So that's kind of how I view that with Matthews. I do think Zebby Matthews has undeniable upside, but it hasn't worked for him in the majors, and the fact that his stuff has fluctuated quite a bit over the last year or so, and he had the shoulder problems. We've seen a lot of guys. The Twins have been really good getting velocity up with these mid-round college draft picks. Festa's one, Matthews is one, etc. But almost all these guys have gotten hurt. And I wonder if there's something to that, or just pitchers get hurt.
Right.
But with Matthews, he not only needs to show that he's effective in the majors, he needs to show that he can throw 150 innings or something.
Well, he's been, I mean, we've spent a lot of this offseason, or a lot of this spring training specifically talking about post-type prospects. Right?
Yeah.
And Matthews is now, he's falling into that category. He's maybe closer to the beginning of that category than the end of that category, but I'm not totally sure that this isn't sort of a make or break year for him, especially when it comes to being a starting pitcher.
Yes, that's
right.
He's closer to the beginning of it in the sense that there's a backup plan for a starting pitcher,
right?
Especially one with really good stuff, that you just move him to the bullpen. We've seen that, like I always say, with pretty much every good reliever in Twins history was a quote unquote failed starter. Whereas like with an outfielder or something, it's like, well, if you don't hit, you can't. There's not somewhere to move. Right. You go play basketball or something. Like there isn't that. So yeah, I agree with you on Matthews. I definitely would not sell your Zebby Matthews shares by any means, but not a great sign at age 26 that they're not willing to hand him the 5th spot in a rotation where there are 6 guys. With that said, I'm very high on Mick Abel.
Yeah.
We've talked quite a bit. We don't need to get into it a lot. We talked about him quite a bit over the last couple weeks on the Patreon side, but he's on The Athletic. I made him one of my picks to click for this season, and that was without knowing he was going to be in the rotation. Now that he's in the rotation, I would double down on that. There's a risk to him that he just can't throw strikes, that he probably moves to the bullpen if that happens. But I just think watching him when he is at his best and even has decent control, the stuff that he has, the velocity, but also 5 or 6 above average pitches that can all pretty much get swings and misses. He really is one of the few guys the Twins have who can overwhelm even major league hitters with just power and stuff and off speed and swing and miss. And so he's certainly one of the potential bright spots of this season. Taj Bradley, I view kind of similarly. Simeon Woods Richardson, maybe too. I view him as more of a dependable option. So yeah, that's where the rotation's at. I don't know. I mean, we can get into this on the more previewy half of the show, but I kind of view the rotation as average relative to the league.
Sure.
Like it's still probably.
We talked about that the moment Lopez went down.
Right.
Right.
And then you lose Festa.
Right.
It's like,
and then with the fact that we've got some questions about Ober now at the number 2,
right.
We're now at the point where we're kind of projecting, can Taj Bradley be somebody who, by the way, has really failed to establish himself as a reliable rotation member Can he be like the number 2 guy? I mean, that's putting a lot on Taj Bradley, given what we have seen from him in his major league career at this point. Mick Abel, I know we're both optimistic about him, but he almost has to be a number 3. He is, for this to
especially if Ober is
right.
I'm pretty pessimistic about Ober.
We should just talk about this. A lot of this conversation also, just one more plug for the Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman. We just did a draft. If you want we're going to be doing a Twin season preview, but we did sort of a player preview in the Patreon last week, where we did a draft of sort of our MVP picks and how many wins above replacement each people were getting something. We had a lot of discussion about Bailey Ober and how he related to Mick Abel and all these other things, and neither of us really drafted Bailey Ober. We're both worried about his performance, and you went out of your way to get Abel fairly early in that draft, in part because you were excited about him, and I went and got Taj Bradley fairly early in that draft for the same reason. So
there's upside, and obviously Joe Ryan at the top. If he pitches like he did last year, that's well above average. But yeah, it's a little worrisome for that. I still think that's clearly the strength of the team itself is the rotation. But as far as being a strength relative to the league,
it's not the weakness.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that. Bullpen wise, they've clarified a few things with releases of Liam Hendricks and Andrew Chafin. There's still 1 or possibly even 2 spots up for grabs, presumably right-handed relievers. This is kind of where I'm thinking maybe a waiver claim, something like that, could jump into the mix late. Yep. But let's go over what we know about the bullpen, which I do expect to be the weakness of this team. I am extraordinarily low on this bullpen, to the point that I think it will probably wreck any chance they have of being competitive. I recognize, by the way, having said that, the single most difficult thing to predict in professional sports might be the performance of bullpens.
Sure.
Like even good ones can blow up, have great overall numbers, but have a few ninth inning high leverage blow ups, which we've seen from Twins bullpens in the past several years, and be mediocre or bad overall. Even mediocre or bad bullpens can, for some reason, lock down in the eighth or the ninth inning in key spots, and from a win probability standpoint, be very good. It's just you're dealing with such a hodgepodge of pitchers, failed starters, waiver claims, guys who added a new pitch, guys who are coming back from injury, et cetera, that is very difficult to predict on an individual level. You're also talking about samples that are like 40, 50, 60 innings or something like that. You're also talking about roles where pitching really well 10 straight times, but then blowing up once in a 2-1 game can wipe out all the good. So it's just very difficult to feel like you have a strong grasp of projecting the bullpen. So all I'm really saying is, from a talent perspective and from sort of a usage role matchup perspective, I just view this as one of the worst bullpens, in modern Twins history. There just isn't there isn't much. And, I will say, people were surprised that they released Hendricks and to a lesser extent maybe Chafin.
Right.
Chafin was throwing 86 miles an hour. And he can joke all he wants about velocity not mattering, but you got to be at 88, 89, 90. You cannot be at 86 miles an hour for 6 weeks as a 35-year-old, middle reliever and expect a major league team to be like, yeah, we're going forward with you. That's just, you're 20 years past the point where that's doable. With Hendricks, he was 93, 94. The question with him is his control and his command and his off-speed stuff good enough to succeed with just kind of okay reliever velocity? And by the way, 93, 94 is below average for a relief pitcher in 2026.
Sure.
It sounds impressive because 20 years ago that was amazing, but he's a guy at his best through 97, 98, 99. He's coming back from injury. It just seems like, reading some of the quotes from them, they just didn't see the consistency with him that they wanted from a stuff standpoint, from a control standpoint. I will say, I thought Hendricks was going to make the team.
I did too.
I didn't think Chafin. I never really got that people. I never really understood why people were so assuming Chafin would make it. Because, as I said a million times, there was no way they were going to keep 4 relievers. It was not functional.
Four lefty relievers. Yeah.
4 lefty relievers, excuse me. Yeah. And Funderburk is one of the only guys who actually performed well down the stretch last year. So keeping him as the third guy with Rogers and Bond, I think, always made more sense to me. And then the fact that Chafin, even by his standards, didn't look great. But the point of signing these older, Hendricks is 37, Chafin is also 37, 36, 37. These older or guys coming off injuries in Hendricks' case to these minor league deals that are non-guaranteed, you don't have a spot on the 40-man roster, it's to evaluate them in camp. They are truly competing for jobs. Now, if either of those guys would have made the team, they would have each gotten $2 million and change. But that's the point of signing these guys. And I know they're big names and they're recognizable names, and the state of the bullpen suggests that anybody with a name is in play to make the team. Right. And that's surprising. Don't get me wrong. But the point of these deals is to bring these older injured guys in, look at them, and try to assess, is there gas left in this tank? And I'm not saying the Twins are the greatest at assessing that. They're not. They've cut some relievers like Jeff Hoffman who have immediately gone into success, and they've certainly kept plenty of relievers who were not good in past years. But if you bring in Liam Hendricks, who's 37 and hasn't pitched well for 3 years, and his velo's down and he's not consistent, what are you supposed to do? And if you bring in Chafin, who's been a solid middle reliever, and he's throwing 86 miles an hour a week before opening day, that's why these type of guys get cut. Now, you would like to have 2 or 3 guys in line that you go, I feel good about this. When in reality, it's going to be like Dan Altavilla, Zach Kent, who was a waiver claim. Altavilla is also 35 and hasn't had the most consistent track record, and he was signed to a minor league deal. It could be Matt Bowman, same thing.
Could be somebody else who's a waiver claim that we're not even thinking about yet. Right.
So I guess there's an argument to giving a little more leeway to a Hendricks or a Chafin who have at least done it before.
Sure.
But That's why you bring these guys in, and that's why they're not getting major league deals. If the Twins were convinced when they signed Liam Hendricks or Chafin that they were going to be on the opening day roster, they would have just given them a major league deal. Like, the reason you give them a minor league deal is because no one was willing to give them a major league deal. So it's not surprising on that front, especially among the lefties, I think.
I heard that news and I was surprised by it as well. In part because also those guys, to the Twins' credit, they were giving those guys early innings in spring training. Like, they wanted to see how they were doing versus the best players on the other team. Like, they were doing what they could to evaluate them. I had 3 different competing thoughts, none of which might be true, that are all pure speculation in terms of like how this went down, right?
It's supposed to be, the game is 2 truths and a lie, John, not 3 lies.
Well, we'll see which one.
Go ahead.
I'm going to raise them because these are 3 things now I want to watch, right? The first was, when they were signed, we were kind of the opinion, the front office is under some pressure to show that they can go and sign some people. Like, they've been told they have some money to spend, just based on what we saw in terms of them reaching out to Framber Valdez, etc. And there's nobody left really on the reliever market. Let's just go see what else we can get at in terms of that, right? And so that's a little bit kind of what you're talking about, is like, let's bring these guys in and see what happens,
Right.
Or else, frankly, they just felt pressure to go do something, even if they didn't necessarily believe in those guys, right, to begin with. The second was much more cynical, which was like, of all the guys that were going to be in the bullpen, these guys were going to be the ones that were making the most money.
That's an interesting, I have that as a little note here to bring up. Now, if Hendricks makes the team, there are 2 types of minor league deals. There's a straight up just minor league deal for a guy you're expecting to play at AAA, where you just sign them to a minor league deal. They're in the organization, but they're not on the 40-man roster, and they're going to make, $80,000, let's say, at AAA, whatever the AAA salary is at this point, maybe a little higher. Then there's also a minor league deal that includes a camp invite, and typically will then have, and often will have, a different salary if you make the major league team. And we've even seen in the past with the Twins or other teams, certainly, where a guy will sign a minor league deal and it'll say he makes $8 million if he makes the team, because then it's just a way to keep the guy off the 40-man roster until the last possible minute to not force different moves, and you evaluate in spring training. In this case, it was more on that side for both of these guys. I know if Hendricks made the team, he made about $2.5 million plus some incentives, and I think Chafin $2.2 million or something like that. And so, to your point, the difference between these 2 guys versus, let's say, Funderburk and Altavilla is about $4 million.
Right.
That would have taken the payroll from 105 to 109 or something like that.
And I'm not sure that was a huge factor, but I bet you it didn't help.
Yeah.
So
it's an interesting, like, from Hendricks or Chafin's perspective, would they have had, in a weird way, would they have had a better chance to make the team if they didn't have as good of a market?
Maybe
to force the Twins into giving them a $2-point-something million major league salary.
So we'll see. So that was the second thing that kind of occurred to me as I was doing this.
Yeah.
The third was this. Back when the Rule 5 draft went on, and we were like, why the hell are they not picking up a reliever in this Rule 5 draft? Like, that's exactly what the Rule 5 draft is for.
Right. They had like the 3rd, 4th pick or something in the Rule 5
3rd or 4th
draft?
pick overall.
Finding a hard-throwing reliever is the easiest thing to do in the Rule 5.
And we were like, this is just weird, right? Well, we did have a conversation that happened at the winter meetings. I was at the winter meetings. We ended up having a conversation with Jeremy Zoll about it, right? And, he basically kind of said, that I'd have to take a look at the exact transcript, but basically the idea was like, well, the problem with a Rule 5 draft guy is that you're kind of locked into them. Like, they've got to make the 26-man roster. You don't have the ability to send them down to AAA and bring them back up. Like, you got to hit on that. Well, these guys are kind of the same way. Like, it might very well be that what we're learning from this is that Jeremy Zoll, maybe even more so than Derek Falvey, really appreciates the flexibility of being able to send people up and down. Now, I don't know how many of the guys that these guys might replace them with have that ability, because they're all, sort of, somewhat, not necessarily established or have options or all that other stuff, right?
But Altavilla cannot be sent down.
Okay.
Matt Bowman cannot be sent down. Who else were we just talking
Funderburk
about?
can.
Right. Funderburk
You know,
can.
right.
Oh, Kent. Zach Kent has one option.
Right.
So yeah, Kent can be set down. You're right, though. I mean, the way you shuffle, and particularly with a bullpen you don't expect to be very good,
Right.
is if a guy throws 45 pitches in a mop-up situation on a Tuesday, you send him down that night and you have a fresh arm from Triple A on a Wednesday, and you can only do that. We call it the St. Paul shuttle.
Right.
If the guys have options, if you don't have to be designating for assignment and placing on waivers every single time you waive guys. But Altavilla is 35 years old. You can't do that with him.
Right.
Bowman, they had him 2 years ago and lost him because they had to waive him every time they sent him. But I do think that's a factor, especially at the end of a bullpen of like, Zach Kent's probably not going to make 65 appearances. He might pitch 3 times in 4 days, go to St. Paul for 2 weeks, and someone else will come up. So yeah,
Well,
that's definitely
I wonder
a
how
factor.
many people they're taking a look at. Like, I'm sure they are taking a look at the other rosters, the other roster battles that are going on amongst the other 29 teams, and taking a look at the relievers that may or may not make it, and thinking, we've got some guys here that we might be able to sort of natch up. But the problem is that generally, if they're available on waivers, it's because they don't have options. Like, that was the whole reason they
Right.
weren't being sent down. So,
Or they didn't look good in camp to secure a job with their current team.
Right.
I will say, Zach Kent was claimed off waivers too. You
Right.
can build
well, that's true.
bullpens from waiver claims, minor leagues.
Sure.
I have no real problem with that. It's just doing it with 35-year-olds, 37-year-olds is not a great solution. But from a front office standpoint, if you are looking at a bullpen depth chart like the one the Twins have right now, you should be licking your lips looking at 60 relievers who are now on the open market or on waivers after teams made their cut downs. I know that sounds silly because those relievers by definition did not secure opening day jobs with other teams, but you should be able from a analytics standpoint or a scouting standpoint to identify one guy across the league among the dozens who were let go, either opted out of minor league deals, cut from camp, placed on waivers, et cetera, and go, ooh, this guy could be a good reliever. He's better than the floor we have established for relievers. So we'll see if they do something like that. I think this also really just kind of lays bare how little they did during the offseason for the bullpen. I mean, I know this was a talking point, but they, as you said, it's possible they were like, well, let's bring in a couple of guys people know. Hendricks, he's been an all-star. Chafin, he's been around the block, whatever. Selfishly, I would have loved both those guys on the team. They're huge personalities who love to talk.
They're really good to talk to, right?
What are you going to do? But this really lays bare, like, the old guys were cooked that they brought in, or at least that's their perception of it. And, like, what did they do for the bullpen? They traded for Bonda. They signed $2 million Taylor Rogers. And then they just, I don't know, Topa and Sands, and we'll get into that on the preview side. But yeah, this really takes some of the air out of like the last remaining notion of, well, they did bring in a 3-time All-Star, or they did bring in a guy who's pitched 15. Well, now those guys didn't even make the team. Now it's just minor league signings, waiver claims, and mediocre relievers as a collection. And it's like, I don't know. And I'm probably, no one is high on the Twins bullpen, I don't think. I'm probably comfortably the lowest on the Twins bullpen. And maybe I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, they're going to be more successful than I think overall this season. But I do not see the vision. I do not see the talent. I do not see the ability to use these guys in different roles. I just think put it this way. If I thought that the rest of the Twins were like a 90-win team, like they had above average rotation, above average lineup, let's say, I would be really worried that the bullpen was going to keep them from making the playoffs. Now, in this case, I don't think that. So I'm just kind of worried that the bullpen will keep them from being at all competitive. But maybe that was weirdly the plan. It's cheap. The whole damn bullpen, I think, costs less than $10 million.
Yeah.
It's got to, right? I mean, there's 8 guys. The most expensive guy's $2 million. And there's a bunch of minimum salary.
Taylor
guys.
Rogers is the most expensive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, so we should have a better idea probably Monday on the Patreon who the last couple of bullpen spots. If I had to guess now, I'm going to say
Wednesday on the Patreon.
Yeah, Wednesday, sorry. I'd say Altavilla and Kent.
I would think so.
Who knows? I mean, who
Yeah, I mean,
knows?
in terms of who's going to be in there, you start with sort of like the guys on the 40-man roster. But even that, I'm not even sure. Like, I'm not sure how invested they are in Kent. And
Kent is on the 40-man roster, but he was just claimed off waivers not that long ago. Altavilla would have to be added to the 40-man roster, but they have some room to do that. Obviously, there's some dead weight, and you can move some guys to the 60-day IL, maybe something like that. Before we talk about the lineup stuff that we've learned, let's talk about our first sponsor. The first sponsor, first and foremost, is our presenting sponsor, Black Stack Brewery, which is going to be hosting your Twins Daily opening day party Thursday in their brewery, which is a great spot. They got a massive TV, huge location, but I like it because it's like there's little sections. It's more intimate than just a big wide open space. Great beer, as we always talk about. You got to hang out with John, but that is what it is.
That's right. We're going to also have free Twins Daily Winter Meltdowns pint glasses for those people who sign up beforehand at twinsdailysocialclub.com. But basically, the real draw is going to be their outstanding beer. I mean, their beer is nationally recognized. They are one of those premier local breweries that I found out that when other brewers come to the Twin Cities, like for conferences and stuff, like they go there. And I've heard this from the other brewers, not from the Black Stack Brewing. It's a
fascinating thing. We've over the years done shows at breweries, and we've had sponsors who are breweries and stuff like that, including now Black Stack. And it's funny, like the way people talk about other breweries as brewers or as like beer lovers. Yeah. It's like some of them, it's like, it really is how people talk about like prospects. It's like, man, this guy could be a functional whatever. And it's like Black Stacks, they could be something. Like this is really like a high end. So it's nice. We really love that they're our presenting sponsor. So we would say nice things anyway. But this is the honest truth of like people talk about Black Stack in a way I've rarely heard about dozens and dozens of other breweries over the years. And I think that's something to not be ignored. Like,
that's right. Also, feel free to join us on opening day. You can sign up at twinsdailysocialclub.com, and that way you can make sure you get your free pint glass as well. But you can also find them all over in your local liquor stores. They are distributed all over Minnesota. They are in Iowa. They're in Wisconsin. They are in North and South Dakota, Arizona, Washington, soon Florida. I definitely recommend their IPAs. Any of their IPAs are outstanding, but their Slopes Pilsner, their Nopes, non-alcoholic Pilsner is great. Pull Tabs Pale Ale. So check them out, Black Stack. Ask for them at your local liquor store because it's easy to, once you start recognizing their cans, they're going to be easy to find every time. Or enjoy a beer on tap and take home a 4-pack with you. Mention the code word Gleeman in the Geek for $2 off a 4-pack at their tap room when you stop by on opening day.
Okay. Let's talk about the lineup stuff that we know. Right before we did the show, they announced that they're optioning Ryan Kreidler and Eric Wagaman to AAA. Wagaman, definitely not a surprise. Right. I think the moment Austin Martin returned from a concussion and played in a game that probably eliminated Wagaman's chance to make the team as a right-handed bench bat, I still think he'd be a lot more useful in terms of, I'm not even a big believer, but just in terms of skill set than some other guys, but it is what it is. He has an option remaining. He'll be at AAA. Kreidler had been in the mix for the utility man spot. And I mean, we talked to Shelton about him, I think on the show when he was on, like defensively, Kreidler is a major league player. Like he's probably the best shortstop they could have defensively. And he can also play all the infield spots. He can play center field. He's played the corners. He just can't hit. Like he's shown no ability to hit whatsoever. And he made a bunch of nice plays in camp, but they knew that about him already. Right. And so this is, I think, them saying they have no confidence really in his bat, or maybe they want to see him make some tweaks at AAA for a month or two and maybe revisit it. This leaves seemingly either Arcia, who's a former All-Star on a minor league deal, or Tristan Gray, who is a journeyman AAA guy who I think's been waived and claimed by 7 different teams in the last couple of years, who's a left-handed hitter who they claimed off waivers not long ago. He's on the 40-man roster. Arcia is a right-handed hitter. I assumed Arcia would get the job if it weren't Kreidler because he's right-handed. That allows you to, against lefties, maybe move Keishel to left field and play the right-handed hitting Arcia, let's say, at second base, something like that. If it's Gray, that's just another left-handed bat. And it's even trickier to put together a lineup against lefties. This also could be a spot where you're trying to find a late addition waiver claim. Somebody was released. But I mean, the bar for utility guys is pretty low across the league. Right. And so guys who are going to be freely available, it's not a great sign. So we'll see. It's probably going to be Arcia or Gray. I think Arcia fits better in terms of skill set, but Arcia also, he might just be cooked. I mean, it might be a Chafin situation where it's like, this guy used to be pretty good, now he's just not good. Who knows? Whereas Gray might not be good, but he's not
Do
cooked.
we know what Arcia's contract situation is?
Yeah, with an opt out. I never heard if he had like a $2 million major league
Yeah,
part
I never
of it.
did either.
It might just be a traditional minor league deal, but even sometimes those have an opt out if he doesn't make the team. So we'll see on that. They released Gio Urshela, which I know he's a big name that people recognize.
Yeah.
We didn't talk a lot about him because I really thought at no point there was a path for him to get a bench spot because he can't play shortstop. He can't play second base. He's no longer a great third baseman. So you're really talking about some third base, some first base. His bat is not good enough. And also third base, you have Royce Lewis locked in there. So
if they decided they needed like a second right-handed bat, I gave Wagaman the edge over Urshela. It also probably didn't help that he wasn't in camp for like 2 weeks because he ended up playing in the WBC. But yeah, he was just so limited in terms of the places he could play. Although, the places that he could play, Wagaman's also pretty limited. Like so.
Wagaman can stand in left field, which is
right. Yes, he can stand left. Although he did,
valuable.
I think he did like once in spring training. I don't think he played very much.
He's played there quite a bit in the outfield. Where
in
Urshela,
the past, you're right.
I never. It's fine to bring Urshela in, no harm, no foul, whatever. Like it's almost doing him a favor. Right. Whatever. And like you said, he went and played in WBC. They signed him, and you're probably 2 years past the point where you get excited about him, even in a bench role. He used to be a really solid player, but he hasn't been of late. And also, just the last thing they need is a corner bat who can't play up the middle and can't play the outfield. So it's a little tricky on that.
Yep.
The other thing we've learned is that they sent down Alan Rhoden to AAA, and which seemingly suggests that James Outman is going to make the team as the left-handed hitting part-time backup platoon, whatever outfielder. I know the reaction to that news seemed pretty extreme, at least on social media, where people were like, Rhoden had a great camp. He hit 300. Outman hit 220. What are the Twins doing? First of all, they both had an OPS in the 700s. Neither of them had a great camp. Batting, don't fall in love with batting average. But also, they're not. Spring training performance is not driving this. Good, bad, whatever. Particularly when they're in the kind of meaty middle of performance. Right. If one of them hit 075 and the other hit 475, yes. Right. But if one had a 750 OPS and one had a 715 OPS, that's not anything. What drove this, I would speculate, is that James Outman is out of minor league options and Alan Rhoden has a minor league option, which means the only way to keep both of them is to send Rhoden to AAA or keep them both on the opening day roster. But that is completely untenable from a usability standpoint. And, also, so I wasn't shocked by that. It's not the decision I would have made. I would have kept down Rhoden. I'm a relatively big believer in Rhoden. But I view it kind of like the Zebby Matthews, Mick Abel situation. We're going to see Alan Rhoden plenty this season. Yeah. He's going to get plenty of opportunities, in my opinion.
This becomes Outman's last chance to really stick with the Twins, probably. And my big question about him is going to be sort of like, how big is his role? Yeah. Like, is he just going to be sort of the backup defensive outfielder, almost like a Kersey role, like he was, like Kersey was last year? Or are they going to be like, you know what, we need to find out whether or not we're keeping this guy. Let's start him in left field. We'll have a decent defense in left field. We'll have Trevor Larnach at DH, and we'll sacrifice first base at Josh Bell. Well, that's it. That's the plan.
I agree. Like because to me the argument for Outman over Rhoden, again, it's not what I would have done, but with Rhoden, I want Rhoden playing wherever he is. Right. Like I don't want Rhoden in the majors playing twice a week as a backup. I want him playing against right-handed pitchers. If that can't happen in the majors right now, make it happen at AAA and then revisit it. With Outman, I'd be much more comfortable with him, like you said, in the Kersey role, just a true backup outfielder. He starts in center anytime Buxton isn't, comes in defensively, whatever it is. But I also wonder, like you said, he could platoon in left field against righties with Austin Martin being the other side of that platoon.
Yes.
And that's much, much better defensively than your other alternatives in left field. But the problem, as you pointed out, is because they are so log jammed with left-handed corner bats or switch hitting corner bats, if you then play Outman and Martin in left field and improve the defense in the outfield, that necessitates then moving Larnach to DH. Okay, fine so far. And then you don't have the DH spot open for Josh Bell, in which case you're playing Josh Bell at first base, which cancels out the defense probably that you've helped in the outfield. You've just made your first base defense worse. So, and it also, where's Cody Clemens in that? All of this, by the way, when I say I would have chosen Rhoden over Outman, well, I wouldn't have been in this spot to begin with, and neither would you, because we wouldn't have kept Larnick for $4.5 million. It all stems from that, and Lord knows we've beaten that horse to death 1,000 times. But if they didn't have Larnick on the roster, first of all, they would have had $4 million to maybe spend on a reliever, who knows, whatever. But also, you could keep Outman and Rhoden. Rhoden could be the platoon in left field.
Right.
Or just play regularly, and Outman could be a true backup, or a difference. You could have a right-handed guy you would have brought in. So it all stems from the original sin of bringing back Larnick, and then because of that, the ripple effect is now you have one spot instead of two spots open, so you're choosing Outman over Rhoden. I don't know. They seem to think Outman made some adjustments offensively and maybe could tap back into it. I don't have a massive problem with giving him 75 at bats to see what it is and revisiting this thing. But if we're at midseason and Rhoden is doing well at AAA and has not gotten an opportunity, then I think that would be a misfire by them.
I actually think I'm going to be of the two plans with Outman either being like backup role as Kersey or being a regular platoon player in left field.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of like, I don't understand why you would hang on to him and do that if you're just having him in a backup role.
Right. Because you
like,
can
like
get
the only like at some point you're just like, what are we jumping through hoops here? So we can have James Outman maybe be a backup player and we're not even really going to find out. We're not going to give him at bats. We're not going to find out who he is. Either he's better than he has been the last 2 years. Either he's the 2023 version or he's not the 2023 version. And if so, I don't know why we're doing this anymore, right?
I agree.
We got to find out one way or the other. And I've also, we'll see. I also wonder how much we are overstating Josh Bell's defensive struggles at first base. Like it is still first base. You know what I mean? Like we'll see.
I mean, the Twins have turned some mediocre first basemen into decent first basemen and turned some good ones into great ones in Carlos Santana. So I'm open to that idea, but his numbers have consistently been not just bad, but among the league worst.
Right.
And also, he's played for a lot of teams. I've talked to some people who have covered him with those teams. It's pretty bad. And I mean, it's not, he's just huge. He just can't move and he's not.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there was a play yesterday.
We did see a little of that in spring training too, like ground balls going past.
Yeah. I mean, there was a play yesterday where a squibber in front of Bradley, he goes over, he barehands it. He makes an okay throw that's offline. And Bell just has a hard time jumping and grabbing it and then almost falls down. And it's like, he's not unplayable at first base, but the scenario that would involve Outman being a semi-regular in left field means Larnick is, like last year, primarily a DH, which I'm all for that, by the way. Larnick's pretty bad in left and injury prone. But then that means more often than not, first base is a weakness. And I don't, it's one thing if you have a really good infield aside from first base, but up the middle is going to be a big issue for the Twins too. And even third base, Lewis has had some issues in the past throwing. You're going to need a guy who can scoop throws. You're going to need a guy who can be a stabilizing force with a bunch of young guys who collectively may not be that good. That's one of the reasons why I think the Twins defense, I might put the Twins defense as a bigger weakness than even the bullpen. It's just the bullpen's going to be a lot more front and center probably. But I think both of those things, I would expect the Twins to be among the worst in the league at both relief pitching and fielding overall.
I mean, the bigger issue that I kind of, which I feel like we're almost not talking about enough in terms of like the weird roster here, is the point you raised, which is, I'm not sure why Cody Clemens is on this roster at this point. Like, I don't know what he's doing. I just don't know where you play him other than just like, I'm giving every other left-handed person on the roster a break sometimes.
Right.
Versus right-handers, you have to figure out some way to put him in there. And you're not, I mean, you can play first and second and third maybe, and maybe right and left field. I just don't see any replacement situation where he's doing that. So,
yeah, I mean, they're in a spot where, first of all, you trade for Rhoden and Outman, who are somewhat similar. You keep Larnick, you still have Wallner, you keep Clemens, you sign Bell. Like, it's like laughable. Like, I would love to get a real honest, reaction to saying, why did you guys do this? And they'll say, oh, because we believe, whatever. But what you're describing is true. The only use a lot of these guys have, Outman, Rhoden, Larnach, Wallner, Clemens, is to be a left-handed bat matched up against right-handed pitchers. And that's fine. That's the most common platoon. Sure. It's been happening since, 100
years.
There's
a lot of right-handed pitchers in this.
Earl Weaver wrote a chapter in a great book about it. It's been around forever. But they have more of those guys than they have spots for them. And so what's going to happen is against righties, one or two of those guys is going to be on the bench against righties, in which case they have no use to you and against lefties, you don't have enough righties to stack the lineup and they're going to be on the bench or, unnecessarily playing in bad matchups. So it's just such a weird roster, and it's every decision. You trade for Outman and then hours later you trade for Rhoden. And then you keep them, but you don't put Rhoden on the roster. But then you keep Larnach, and you still have, and you keep Clemens. It's like these guys individually, but collectively, man, these pieces just do not fit together in any sort of, functional way. It's I don't know.
Yeah, you summarized it well, which is versus right-handers, one of these guys is going to end up being on the bench, and versus left-handers, too many of them are going to be in the lineup.
Right, I mean, that's exactly right.
It's just. That's not why we have them. So yeah, it's a weird. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I will be interested in seeing how Shelton ends up. What Shelton's thought process is on this, and the fact that we saw Keisha running around in the outfield also is sort of like, well, okay,
but that's fine. I think he might end up in left field.
Right,
we'll see.
Right.
This is going to be a big year for him to prove something defensively at second base.
Yeah,
but the key to playing Keisha in the outfield is primarily doing that against left-handed pitchers so he can sub for one of these lefties. So that opens up second base, except you don't have a right-handed player to put at second base because it's Clemens or maybe Gray who are both lefties. So it defeats the entire purpose. A couple other real quick things on the lineup. Shelton might be listening to the show. Now, I can guarantee he's listened to at least 52 minutes of this podcast because that's how long our interview with him was a few weeks ago. Beyond that, I'd be a little surprised, I guess, if he listened to more of it. But we talked pretty recently a couple times about, including the last show, about how if you're going to bat Buxton and Keisha 1-2 in some order, from a skill set standpoint, it makes sense to put Keisha number 1 and Buxton number 2, because Keisha's strength is getting on base and Buxton's strength is hitting for power. And so you want the guy getting on base in front of the guy hitting for power as opposed to the opposite. Now, it doesn't matter that much. Ultimately, you're just trying to get your best hitters at the top of the lineup. But we saw for the first time, I think, that happened yesterday. They flipped it after Buxton had been leading off quite a bit last year and this spring, where Keisha's batting first, Buxton's batting second. It's also second has become pretty much the new third spot.
Sure.
In terms of teams putting their best player there, because it's the best combination of an RBI impact, because you're going to have the leadoff guy in front of you, but more plate appearances because you're moving up a spot because you want your bet. It's like, you'll see Aaron Judge bat second. You'll see guys like that bat second. And so I personally, that's exactly how I would draw the top of the lineup up, which to me, Keisha is a ideal leadoff man. He draws walks. He gets on base. When he's on base, he can run.
Right.
He doesn't have power that's being wasted with solo homers. Buxton is the opposite. I mean, Buxton can run too, so he's fine atop the lineup. But Buxton does not draw walks. Buxton does not have good on base percentages typically. Buxton's power.
Right.
And why not have Keisha trying to get on first base so that Buxton can hit 2-run homers instead of solo homers? So I like that. After that, it gets a little wonky with the lineup. We'll see. I think yesterday it was Wallner third and Josh Bell fourth, which I wouldn't be surprised to see that. And then let's see, one other thing. Okay, that's it. Let's talk a little bit about our next batch of sponsors here before we get to the preview thing.
RotoWire. We've been talking about RotoWire on the podcast probably for a decade. And we've been talking about it between each other for much longer than that. I think we're both big users of RotoWire long before they approached us about being a sponsor here. And it's because it's if you are into fantasy baseball or if you're into fantasy anything, they are an essential resource for keeping track of things. Or even if, for that matter, we use it just for tracking.
Yes.
I would just want to find the news on who did Kreidler. Did Kreidler have an injury history or something like that? Like you can find all of that.
Their player news database is so essential to even someone writing or even just being a fan of, like, you can get the entire transaction history for every player. You can get the entire rumor and speculation history because they log all this stuff and then their database keeps it. And then, yeah, like you said, for fantasy, you guys are probably doing your fantasy baseball drafts. You can get 20% off a RotoWire subscription. Just go to rotowire.com, use the promo code Gleeman, do all, customizable cheat sheets. You can format and sync your entire league scoring and set up to it, which is really valuable. Instead of just relying on these old, one size fits all cheat sheets and rankings and stuff, they can customize everything to fit your league. I will tell you that I use them I'm in a relatively high stakes fantasy basketball league, which I finished in the money for, thanks largely to using RotoWire for my draft prep on that.
And I won our fantasy football league.
Well, that was just
using
luck.
their synced league thing. Yes.
So go to rotowire.com, use the promo code Gleeman, and you can get 20% off. Use them for your drafts coming up before the opening day. But also
not just for the draft, also the whole season long. Like they'll help you get all the pick everything that you screwed up in your draft. They will help you fix during the season with that sync your league option. So.
Our next sponsor here is Factor Meals, and they've been a long time sponsor of ours too.
Yeah.
Here's how Factor Meals works. They have a constantly evolving menu of dishes that you can pick, and you can cater it towards, let's say you're vegan, vegetarian, you love meat, or you want something kid friendly for your family. You go in and you choose, and you can opt out, you can opt in. The menu changes all the time on a weekly basis. You pick and choose what you want. They send it to you, super easy, direct to your door. It's all packaged. All you got to do, take it out, pop it in the microwave for a few minutes. It's super easy, which I appreciate as someone who cannot cook a lick.
Yep.
But also, it actually tastes good.
That's really good.
That's what differentiates them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Always fresh, never frozen. So it's really good stuff. And it's, creative meals, for lack of a better word. Just like the sort of thing that, frankly, I'd be proud to actually cook at home. And that's always, like I said, always fresh, never frozen. It's ready in about 2 minutes. There's no prep. There's no stress. So you actually just stick to your goals. They've got all these collections, high protein. They've got a new Muscle Pro collection, etc. So anyway, it's a food hack. Actually, it's an eating hack, Factor Meals. And
go to factormeals.com/Gleeman50off, like the number 50 off, and use the code Gleeman50off. And the reason is you get 50% off, and they'll toss in free breakfast for a year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with the code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Go to factormeals.com/Gleeman50off. Use the code Gleeman50off, and you'll get 50% off plus free breakfast for your year. Factor
good
Meals.
Stuff. Yeah.
Okay. We've reached the season preview portion of the show. We're under an hour, John, which means
amazing.
That's we've accomplished something.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start really overall. Like, I wrote about this morning. And we talked about it at the top of the show. Like, this is as low as the external expectations for the Twins have been since, I would say, 2015, possibly 2017, in terms of projections, in terms of over-unders. Certainly fan morale has absolutely plummeted.
Yeah.
Attendance is down, and rightfully so. I'm not trying to say
no, you're blaming the fans. The fans aren't supporting the team enough.
I always do that. Yeah. Always blame the customer. That's what they say, right? The customer's never right. Isn't that the...
That's right. Yeah, right.
And so, their projections, the two projection systems I like to look at, Baseball Prospectus and Fangraphs, they both have them right around 78 wins. That's pretty bad. It's, I think,
more than I've got them at. So
third and fourth worst in the American League. And that's optimistic compared to the odds makers, the over-under,
right.
Have them at 72.5, which is their lowest since 2015.
Okay.
And now, let's preface it. Like I said at the beginning of the show, in 2015, winning record.
Right.
2017, 85 wins in a playoff spot. That's the beauty of baseball. It can happen. And Lord knows, AL Central is not real impressive ever, but not this season.
Yes.
I mean, if you're going to sneak into a playoff spot with this roster, it's going to happen in the 2026 AL Central, 83 wins or something like that. So most of the projections I've seen give them 15-20% chance to make the playoffs. That seems right to me, honestly. Things go well. If you're a 75 win team, you can get to an 83 wins, something like that. If things go poorly and you're a 75 win team, you get to 68 wins, something like that. It works both ways. I'm not ruling that out. I just, coming into camp, I was pretty pessimistic about this team. But you could at least kind of like squint and see the path of being competitive
Sure.
by being carried by the rotation. When you had Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan at the top, and you had a bounce back from Bailey Ober, and then you had this collection of 5 younger starting pitchers with upside: Zebby, Festa, Simeon Woods Richardson, Mick Abel, Taj Bradley. You had 8, what they felt were 8 major league caliber starters.
Right.
2 of them were veteran all-stars. One of them, in Ober, was trying to bounce back and get back to kind of mid-rotation status. And then of the other 5, several of them you were hoping were going to emerge, like we talked about with Abel or Bradley or Festa or whoever, and become kind of the next group of mid-rotation or better starters. I had some skepticism with that, certainly. But the premise of it at least made sense to me logically, of like, all right, well, if we have kind of a mediocre lineup and the kind of a below average bullpen, but the starting rotation is well above average, you can get to average, you can get to 500, and maybe things break the right way.
But and especially because you've got a bunch of guys who we've been waiting to kind of take a big step forward. If they take a big step forward, maybe the lineup is a lot better than we think it's going to be.
It still requires an incredible amount of optimism,
right?
But at least you can sort of mentally put those pieces together and get there.
Yeah.
Well, 3 hours into camp, Pablo Lopez goes down for the season.
Right, yeah.
And 2 weeks after that, David Festa shut down with more shoulder problems. And now we're 4 days out from spring training, and Bailey Ober's throwing 87 miles an hour. And I don't think the rotation is going to be bad, but I don't think the rotation is a strength relative to the league. And I see the rest of the roster so underwhelming, both from a stars, but also just quality depth. I mean, we've been talking about the bullpen, we've been talking about the bench spots. It's not an impressive collection. And I just don't know that this rotation has it in them to carry that, even to like low 80s win totals. I mean, I think even Joe Ryan's got some question marks about how he can make it through a full season. Bailey Ober, huge question marks. And so once that happened, once the depth vanished, and especially obviously the Pablo thing is the biggest factor, then it's like, I don't even know that I can see the vision of this team being competitive, short of, Royce Lewis having an all-star season and Matt Wallner hitting. Like, yes, you can always take a look, and if these 5 things all go perfectly, Luke Keeschel scores 100 runs, Byron Buxton's healthy, Matt Wallner hits 40 homers, Josh Bell's a all-star, yeah, you can start to build this, you can start to dream on it, but that's true of almost any team. I try to stay grounded in reality, and there's just as much downside to all these guys too. I mean, we've talked endlessly about the core players needing to not only prove something for this year, but just to remain in the core. And so that's where I'm kind of at. I see it now as like an average-ish starting rotation with some upside, but Ober really scares me a lot. Yeah. And I see it as an average-ish lineup, and that's higher than projections. I saw Fangraphs projects the Twins to have the 20th best lineup out of 30 teams. I'd probably put them more in the 15 to 20 range, something like that. And there is some upside there. But as I've said, I expect the bullpen to just be abysmal.
So I'll give you a behind the scenes for the upcoming over-under episode, which we do on Patreon on Wednesday. Last year I had a lot of success, went 11-4. Versus,
look at you, John. He had to get that brag
versus you 5-10.
Well, let's not talk about that. I like to prop others up. You don't have to push someone down to prop yourself up.
Last year I was taking a look at it this year, and I was like, I did something different last year. What is it I did? I was trying to remember what the process was, because for the first year in a long time I was better, right? It was probably just luck, but whatever. The process, I decided to follow the same process, and that process goes like this. The first thing I do is I put each team into one of 5 categories, right? They're either in the group of like 10 over 500, 5 over 500, 500, 5 games under 500, 10 games under 500, right? As I went through the list, my first one with the Twins was that there were 5 games under 500. They're going to be a 76 win team. And I got all the way down through that list. And then I like to take a look like, okay, overall, what is everybody averaging? Like I should average 81 between them all, right?
For the league, you mean? Yeah.
For the league, right?
It's one of the things that's one of the keys to projecting things.
Right.
Make sure the numbers add up to a 500 record
right.
league-wide, because
That's
otherwise,
right. That's right. Well, they didn't. They added up to 25 games over 500, right? So I had to find 5 teams that I overdid by 5.
John,
500.
that is such a representation of your personality.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, this is why I do it.
John, here's what I'd say. John, when I complain about people to him, he views everyone in his life as 25 games above 500.
I put everybody 5
You know
games
I mean?
higher than 500 than they do.
I'm like, this guy stinks. No, I can see him winning 81 games. What are you talking about?
This is exactly why I have that chicken.
That's so
place
funny
there.
that we have proof of that now.
Yes, exactly right. And as I start going through them, like I'm like, well, I mean, this is an obvious one. There's enough going on that they're probably closer to 71. Like, I probably should be doing that in the first place on this. And I found 4 other ones as well. I lowered as well. But at that point I was like, well, then I'll make an adjustment sort of based on things, but I'm like, they're in the category where they're not going to be a good team. Like they might overachieve and they might really surprise. We certainly have every year when we take a look at the over-unders and what Vegas did and how people finished. There are some teams that are 10 or 15 games off of their projection.
Sure.
Like that's absolutely
projections are wrong all the time.
Right. Right. This is what you talked about earlier. Like it's baseball, man. It's awesome, right? That's both awesome and terrible about baseball.
But there's a difference between needing things to go right to be 500 and needing things to be right to be a playoff team.
That's right.
Well, I think what you're saying, and that's kind of how I view it too. It's like, it's not impossible that these things will go right and the overall outcome will defy expectations, maybe by 10 games.
Right. So
but I don't know that I see the path to like actual goodness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The other 71 win teams were the White Sox, the Angels, and the A's. Right. That is sort of in that category, right? The only 76 win team I've got on there right now is sort of the Rays. Okay. Just and everything. And so
this is the John Bonus projection system. JBPS? JBPS? Yeah. Okay.
There you go. Yeah. So, I mean, and if I say which one are the Twins closer to, are they closer to the Rays or are they closer to those other 3? Well, I think they're better than the other 3, but I think they're closer to them than they are to the Rays.
By the way, I'll take A's over Twins if you want to make that bet.
Well, maybe.
Just win total.
Let's see. What did I have? Yeah, I do. I have them. Even on the adjusted numbers, I have them lower. I have the A's lower.
We'll talk about that on Wednesday when we do it on patreon.com/Cleveland. But yeah, I mean, I think you're going to tend to be more optimistic, like we just, joked about, obviously. But
how about let me do it this way. Other than those 3 teams, the 3 teams that we think are going to be down there, right? A's, Angels, White Sox.
Well, I mean, Cleveland.
Name another American
have a lot
team where you're like they're a worse team than the Twins.
Well, I'm not going to do that because, as you guys will find out, I think the Twins are going to be really bad. But I mean, there are certainly people who think Cleveland's time is going to be up.
Yeah,
they're spending even less than the Twins, for instance.
Yes.
There are certainly people who view, whoever the last place team in the AL East, because it's such a monster, is going to end up with an inflated loss total because they're playing such a difficult schedule,
right?
Et cetera, et cetera. So I get what you're saying on that. I largely agree, but the AL Central can save them to some extent because not only are you playing those teams a lot, although less than you used to, it's a lot easier to just go, well, they can get to 500. Right. They just beat up on so-and-so. First of all, you're playing those teams less since they changed the schedule. And also, not to use the most cliched thing ever from Rounders, which is a 40-year-old movie or whatever, but like if you can't spat the sucker at the table, you might be the sucker at the table, basically, to paraphrase that. And so who are you beating up in the Central? Maybe the White Sox. By the way, I'm not that sure the White Sox are going to be terrible anymore.
Yeah, right.
They're not going to be good, but I do think they've added some young pieces. They signed a Japanese slugger that I think is intriguing. I think they have some pitching in place. I don't expect them to be good, but they seem to be at least trending upward.
Sure, right.
Whereas I don't think the Twins are trending upward.
No.
And, I would expect the Tigers to be the best team in the division. Probably they're expected to be. I think Kansas City looks decent, at least. Having Bobby Wood Jr. helps. Obviously, he's
Yes.
one of the 5 best players in the world, as everyone saw in the WBC.
Yeah, I'm still wrestling with whether they're a 76 win team or an 80 win team. I'm not sure exactly where they are.
Yeah,
but,
that's fine.
Right.
I will always assume Cleveland will be at least decent until
Yep.
they're not.
Yep.
Because we've gone through this so many times with Cleveland where it's like, I don't know how they're going to do it. And then you look up and they have 87 wins and it's
Right.
like, okay. And so that's the state of the Central. It's not a good division. And that will potentially keep the Twins from piling up losses that they might in a better
Right.
division.
Right.
But I don't know that that's going to lead to the Twins being the second best team in this division. I would probably say they're the 4th best team in this division. And if you said they're not going to finish 4th, I would expect them to finish last more so than I would expect them to finish 2nd or maybe even 3rd, let alone 1st, obviously. So the Central will help, but it only helps if you're a decent team. If you're not a decent team, then you're just contributing to the Central being terrible.
Right.
The issue that they have, the depth has deteriorated significantly. Think of where they were just a few years ago, where they had Michael A. Taylor and Kyle Farmer, Willie Castro, et cetera, et cetera. It's just gone. And a lot of that is some of the young players not stepping forward, but a lot of it is just shedding $60 million in payroll over the last 3 years.
When we were just talking earlier this episode about picking up a guy off the waiver wire just prior to opening day, and how they might use the 26th man or the 25th man on the roster, I flashed back to, this is a 2014 discussion,
right?
Like, and listen, we love baseball regardless. We started this podcast in 2012, right? Or 2011. We'll talk endlessly about how they will end up showing up
whatever.
the beauty of finding exactly that perfect guy for the 23rd man on the roster to be your your right-handed.
We're your huckleberries for that. We'll spend 40 minutes on it.
We love that stuff. Yeah. We've got lots of experience doing it, but that's a different discussion than we were having 3 years ago.
Right. Well, I mean, and think of it just monetarily. Kyle Farmer, when they brought him in, was making $6 or $7 million.
Right.
Michael A. Taylor, I think, was making like $6 or $7 million. Willie Castro was making $6 million. Right. Now their biggest move, Josh Bell and Caratini, are $7 million players. Like they went from having high-end backups and part-time players because they valued that depth, because they recognized with a lineup that had Buxton and Royce Lewis and all these other injury-prone guys, you need good 10th and 11th men. To now, it's like, okay, Caratini, I'll give him credit. He's a high-end backup catcher.
Sure.
I just don't know the logic of making one of your only real moves a high-end backup catcher when you have so many other needs, and Jeffers can just be your primary catcher. I don't really get that. But yeah, I mean, the depth has just deteriorated noticeably kind of year by year, but then it really fell off this year where we're going through bench spots and we're like, this scrap heap guy, that scrap heap guy, this minimum guy.
And even on top of that, even the ones that you get are not necessarily really fitting what you're trying to do anyway. Right.
And the bullpen kind of same thing. And so, but beyond that, and so the depth I think is going to come into play because they're going to deal with injuries and all that. And even the starting pitching depth, which was so touted coming into camp, is basically gone. You have one extra guy and he's not even looking good lately. If they have one starting pitcher injury, it's either Zebby Matthews and good luck, let's hope he's healthy, or you're already turning to, kind of B-level prospects and Andrew Morris and guys like that. Maybe Connor Prelip at some point, we'll see. There's some upside there because you're talking about prospects, but that's scary depth to be entering the season with. I mean, there's been years the Twins like to have. There was 1 year, 3 years ago, they had Bailey Ober in AAA as a 6th guy. Then you had Varlin. Then a couple years ago, you had Simeon Woods Richardson as the next guy up. And so even the starting pitching depth. But here's the other thing. And so I think that depth is going to hurt them. And I think it's less obvious when you look at the team because you want to gravitate to the starting guys and the big names. And that's how most people, and that's how we view when we do our over-unders for teams that aren't the Twins, we're not looking at the last guy on the bench and we're looking at who are their best 3 or 4 hitters, who are their best 3, trying to get a big picture view. The depth is something that kind of quietly over the course of 162 games hurts you in small areas, just kind of eats away at the quality of the team that you're putting out there, particularly if they're injuries. But here's the other reality of it. They're lacking star caliber guys too. Right. Like, who would you describe as a star? Obviously, Buxton is a star. Joe Ryan was an all-star last year and is a star. There's no one in the bullpen that I would describe as even close to being, even for a reliever, a star. Right. the rest of the starting rotation, no one is a star, obviously. Maybe someone like Abel or Bradley takes a step forward and gets to the fringes of that this year, but I certainly wouldn't count on that. And even in the lineup, Royce Lewis is absolutely capable of being a star. We've seen it, but it's been a while since we've seen it. Matt Wallner, is he capable of being a star? Maybe not, but he's certainly capable of popping 35 homers. Josh Bell, same thing. But star power,
Right.
if you don't have quality role players who fit well together and quality depth to kind of pick up the slack and add a win here or win there with just the kind of the floor being high, then you're relying on guys to have all-star seasons. And I just don't see that from a whole lot on this roster. So I think they're deficient in high-end talent. I also think they're deficient in sort of the marginal role talent. And then, as we've said, the pieces also don't fit well together. So you're getting the worst versions of that. With the bullpen, you're having to use your lefties against righties. In the lineup, as we discussed minutes ago, lefties on the mound and you're having to start too many lefties against them, or righties on the mound and you're having to put some of your lefties on the bench. Like, the pieces aren't great to begin with, but I think you're getting the worst version of that. And so you add all that up and it's hard for me to start to see the momentum towards better.
What you're talking about, it kind of reveals itself. Last week on the Patreon, we said, hey, watch Sunday's lineup. See what Sunday's lineup looks like. But Buxton will be back from WBC. It's a home game. They're going to be doing, see what Shelton does for Sunday's lineup, because I think that's going to be telling. And sure enough, you see, we talked already a little bit about, Keishel and Buxton swapping places as a possibility.
Yeah.
But as you try to build a lineup there, it becomes obvious how much faith you are putting in players that have not justified a tremendous amount of faith just yet. As you're like, oh, well, Wallner's going to hit third. Okay. And Bell's our cleanup hitter. And who was it?
Larnick's in there, obviously.
Larnick is
Brooks
number
Lee.
5 hitter, or something. It was just, that's what he's kind of going through. And I'm like,
well, then you also at the top, Buxton is great, but Buxton is a very big injury risk, and he's also aging. Luke Keishel, in that discussion a minute ago about stars, I absolutely think Luke Keishel has a chance to become an all-star player. But he's played 45 games in the majors while having 3 significant injuries, and, it's possible he's just a good regular, not a star. And Royce Lewis, same thing. You're counting on those guys to stay healthy, and then to your point, you're counting on Wallner, who was so bad last year that people were, emailing us they should cut him. Might be the number 3 hitter on opening day.
I like our number 1 and 2 a lot.
Yep.
I don't think we have 3 and 4 or maybe even 5 on the roster, and then we've got a lot of good 6 and 7s.
Right.
And and maybe a pretty good couple 8s and 9s. I don't know.
No, you're right, because you look at some of the best lineups,
and that's the star power difference, right? That's where you put those star guys, right?
You look at this is obviously not an apples to apples comparison, but you look at the Dodgers lineup, and it's like every guy in their lineup could be a number 3 hitter for some teams.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
And so they got some guy batting first who could be batting third, and they got some guy batting. And it's like, I'm not comparing them, obviously. But yeah, the Twins have Keishel and Buxton, and then a whole bunch of guys in that middle where it's like, if things go good, he could be a number 5 hitter. If things go pretty well, he could be a 6 hitter, all that. So yeah, I think the lineup, I don't know. And also, here's the other thing I'll say about the lineup. It's basically the same core lineup. You've added Keishel now to the mix this year, and you've added Bell, like you said, and Julian and Miranda have exited. There's been some changes, but it's the same core group to the point that they didn't get rid of Larnick. It's Lewis, it's Wallner, it's Brooks Lee, it's Buxton, et cetera, et cetera. For the past 2 years, that has fell apart in the second half and underwhelmed overall. And that was one of my biggest criticisms of this team the past 2 off seasons is, you're just going to stick with this core? How much more do you need to see from this core? And my assumption is if it goes bad this year, you have no choice but to break up this core and move on to the next wave. And there is a next wave. We can talk about that in a second too. But I said that last year too. And so the lineup, I certainly do not expect the lineup to be bad. I think the lineup will be closer to kind of a middle ground lineup, and there is some upside. But I also think the notion that, they'll be above average offensively, that we just haven't seen that for a couple years, and it's kind of the same group. Yeah. Couple other things here, preview-wise. So expectations, like I said, are low externally. Internally, at least with the new principal owner, Tom Pohlad, he spent the past several months, his first several months at the helm,
Yeah.
saying, I expect him to be competitive. I expect him to win. He talked about he wanted to be aggressive. He talked about he's willing to spend money, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all great. That all sounds great. That is what I would tell a new owner to say when he takes over.
And
But
I think he is being that way over on the business side of stuff, in terms of like what changes they are trying to make internally. But okay, keep going.
they got $105 million payroll.
Yeah, I know.
They didn't spend a lick on the bullpen. They didn't spend a lick on the lineup except for a journeyman DH and a journeyman backup catcher who are solid. They're fine. And 10 million of that 105 is going to pay Carlos Correa to play elsewhere.
Sure.
And 21.5 million of that 105 is going to Pablo Lopez to rehab Tommy John surgery all year. That's not their fault, obviously, but you're really looking at like a $75 million roster. And that's like Marlins territory in terms of resources that you're going to actually put out onto the field on opening day. And, that's even the 105 is down 60 million from 2023. It's down 30 something million from last opening day even. And, relative, they're 75 million below the league average for this season, which is roughly 180. And relative to the league, they are spending, which, rises year over year, obviously. The Twins are spending less relative to the league than they have in 25 years. Since the Tom Kelly days was the last time they spent less money compared to the league as a whole on payroll. And so you can talk as big a game as you want, and maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, Tom Pohlad's actions have caught up to his words, and payroll is up, and he is making signings, and he is being aggressive and all that.
And we do know that there is his explanation for that is fairly straightforward, which is like I figured out that we want to be aggressive about this way after the free agent market had already been mostly drained.
That may be true.
That
paints an extraordinarily dysfunctional picture of the ownership and front office. Now that may be how it played out.
Just so we're clear, that's clear.
But whose fault is that?
Right. Yeah, well.
Like, it is what it is. Like, he didn't get dropped by a stork on the Twins' doorstep in mid-December. The Pohlad family's been running the thing for 50 years, or 40 years. And, they pushed out Falvey, they pushed out Baldelli, they brought, yes, did this specific Pohlad not take over until mid-December? Yeah. And at that point, was most of the free agent crop cleared out? Well, yeah. Maybe you should have thought about such a savvy businessman, billionaires, giving your front office some clarity on their spending ability in, I don't know, October, November, December.
Oh, well.
They were in this holding pattern, but the holding pattern never went away. Yeah, Tom Pohlad took over in mid-December. Name one thing they've added to the team since then.
Yeah.
You can't. The two guys they added were an over-the-hill Andrew Chafin and an over-the-hill Liam Hendricks, both of whom cost nothing and have since been cut. And so words are great. The team is ill-equipped to contend. There's no spending on it. It's 3.5 months since Tom Pohlad took over. They haven't made a single trade or free agent signing of any meaning whatsoever. And so,
well, and here's the thing. I mean, if this season ends up playing out very well, like it could be playing out, like if it plays out the way the projections will have it playing out, if it plays out the way Vegas expects it to play out, then being aggressive has a very different meaning than being aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, they were aggressive at the trade deadline last year. Yeah. And made the team demonstrably worse.
That's right.
And less expensive, by the way, too.
Yeah, the aggressive path is let's make this team worse and do a full rebuild, right? So
before we get into the last part of our preview here, let's talk about our last couple of sponsors.
Harry's Razors. I've come to appreciate Harry's Razors in a whole new way now that I am shaving my head.
John at age 74 has decided to not shave and let his beard grow. This is, what are we looking at? 9 months of growth? Half a goatee.
About right. Yeah, you can almost see it now, but I shave my head every day now, and I will tell you, it's nice to have Harry's Razors. It just ends up very smooth. I don't know what else to say. Like I appreciated Harry's Razors in part because I learned until I got my Harry's Razors, I didn't realize how much my stubble leftover stubble just from my electric razor and stuff was sort of sandpapery against, say, Chrissy's face. And now
Let's hope Chrissy's face. If it was anybody else, we got a bigger topic here, John.
Oh, we got
Keep that
bigger
away from my
topics.
face, please.
I'm not sandpapery anymore on that, and my head isn't sandpaper anymore. That helps now when I'm putting on hats, or not putting on hats, putting on shirts. Because when you have a bald head, if it's a little sandpapery, you try to put on the t-shirt, grabs your head, pulls you back
boy.
like this. None of that anymore with Harry's razors. Now that I'm just shaving every day with shaving every day with Harry's razors, they're also half the price of the other stuff. It's also way more convenient. All the stuff that you know about with Harry's razors. Great shave, half the price, super convenient, super packaging, makes you feel like a big shot. All the stuff that you want out of a razor. It's just a better way to do razors.
And for a limited time, our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/Gleeman. That set, you get the all new Harry's Plus razor, you get a 5-blade cartridge, you get foaming shave gel, and you get a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just go to harrys.com/Gleeman. That's HARRYS. harrys.com/Gleeman to claim the offer. And after you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you to harrys.com/Gleeman. Let's talk about our last sponsor. This is relevant to the discussion we just had, I suppose. Our last sponsor here is Hims, which is going to help you with that hair loss. If you decide, I don't want to have a completely bald noggin, I would like to maybe do something about that.
You might look at John and think that immediately. Yeah, if you're watching us on
maybe
YouTube.
Yeah. Hims gives you access to not only hair loss treatments, a wide variety, pills and sprays and serums and stuff like that. Anything you're comfortable with, basically. But there's ED stuff, there's weight loss, there's all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
All you do is you go to hims.com/Gleeman and you take a free online visit to kind of tell them what you're thinking, what your needs are. They will recommend some different products and some different stuff that can help you. And you might just decide you don't want to look like the two guys you're staring at if you're watching on YouTube.
That's right.
And this is the easiest
access.
way to do that.
Yep. Simple online access to personalized and affordable care, hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more. Visit hims.com/Gleeman. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Hims.com/Gleeman for your free online visit.
Okay. Let's close this one out with a little bit on the season preview front, some of the stuff we haven't gotten to yet. So
Okay.
the other thing I struggle with this team is, we just talked about and I ranted about how little they've changed on the field. And, it's easy to look and say, well, they won 70 and 92 last year. They had 92 losses last year. And if you've done very little to supplement the roster or add talent to the roster, when you expect something similar? And that's kind of where I'm at overall. But here's the other thing I'll say. Before the trade deadline, they were on pace to go 77 and 85, which is just kind of like you discussed earlier. That's just a run-of-the-mill bad team.
Yep.
That's just a mediocre team that isn't performing well. After the trade deadline, they had the worst for August and September, which is roughly, a third of the season, something like that. They had the worst record in the American League and the second worst record in all of Major League Baseball. Only the Colorado Rockies were worse. They played at basically 105 loss pace for the final 2 months. And so, yes, 92 losses is where they ended up. But for the first 2/3 of the season, roughly, they were an 85 loss team. And for the last third of the season, they were a 105 loss team. And if that's how you finish, and then your only real additions were Victor Caratini, Josh Bell, and I don't know, Taylor Rogers.
Right.
Why would you expect that 105 loss team that was really just some of the worst baseball I've ever seen to be, 20 wins better than that, something like that, as a pace? Now, some of the trade deadline guys, are going to be joining the mix in a more meaningful way.
Sure.
Whether it's Outman, whether it's Rhoden, whether it's Mick Abel, Taj Bradley, etc. And I do think a lot of those guys represent their best chance to be competitive with upside and all that. So I'm not saying they are not changing over the roster a little, but it is shocking to me that given how much they traded away and given how horrifically they played over the last 2 months, that they made no significant trades whatsoever. And to even bring in people, bring in a reliever, bring in backup outfield, anything. And they really they signed a first baseman and a good backup catcher. And it really, what conclusion would you draw? If you just said alien from outer space and you went, somebody said there's a sport called baseball, there's a team in Minnesota, how many wins are they going to have? Well, you'd say, well, how many did they have last year? You go, well, they had 92 losses, but they also finished as a 105 loss pace, and then they did nothing. The person would go, well, aren't they a 100 loss team, or maybe a 95 or at least a 90 loss team? And so to me, the onus would be on them to convince me or you or anybody listening to this that they will be significantly improved, because I cannot sit here in good conscience and assume that, because they have done nothing. Like I said, they've talked a big game. They've changed the manager. They've changed the front office lead. They've changed the owner, although even though those changes are not new people. They're all just former people or right-hand men getting bumped up, or a different first name, same last name as the Pohlad. It's remarkable to me that they try to position it as this team can be competitive. It's expected to be competitive. And Pohlad said this multiple times to us. We need this team to be competitive because we have to start making meaningful headway in winning back this fan base, to which I throw up my hands and say, why did you not do anything in that regard? Like, why did your brother not? Why have you not? Why have the front office has been in place the whole time? I don't understand logically how this would be expected to be a significantly better team, unless you're just sure Abel and Bradley and everyone and Wallner and Lewis. Again, if you're going to check every box of bounce back, high end, 90th percentile, well, yeah, you're going to come up with a winning team. But if you try to stay kind of grounded in what a realistic expectation is, I unfortunately think the realistic expectation for the talent on this roster is just not good. That's what I just keep coming back to. And I think that's borne out with projection systems, which are not based on narratives. They're not based on pessimism or optimism. They're just inputs and crunching them and spitting out numbers. And then obviously
I'm actually surprised how high the projection systems are. Like, it makes me second guess myself on that, a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's going to come down to I think it's going to come down to what we've talked about. I'll throw two factors out there. The first is when we keep saying the post type prospects, how many of them end up, establishing themselves as not just below average major leaguers who can stick around the league for a little while, but guys who could be average, above average, potential all-stars, etc. Like, they need those guys to step forward. And I know we have high hopes for a couple of the pitchers. We probably have more tempered hopes for a few of the hitters.
Well, and we talked with Derek Shelton about this, and he agreed largely with that premise and sort of talked us through it. Let me just read some names that I think fit that description of post-type prospects, but also like young veterans who need to show something or risk being pushed out of the Twins' plans. And this is a long list. I'll start with the pitchers here. Taj Bradley. Now, he's coming from Tampa, 3 years in the majors already. He needs to show something, obviously. I would say David Festa, but he's injured. Zebby Matthews, clearly, which we discussed. I think even getting into, I wouldn't say Simeon Woods Richardson because he's largely been pretty solid.
Right.
But they would need him to take a step forward potentially and be a mid-rotation guy instead of a back-of-the-rotation guy. Then you start to get in offensively. Brooks Lee, prime example. Needs to show he can play shortstop and needs to show he can hit. What more could you need to show than that? And needs to show he's healthy. Royce Lewis, absolutely prime example of that, obviously, with a huge spectrum of potential results.
I noticed in the lineup yesterday, they had him batting seventh behind, say, Ryan Jeffers.
Yeah.
Trevor
Larnach, great example. I thought they would have already cut bait on Trevor Larnach. And so Alan Rhoden, to some extent, he's 26 years old. And then Matt Wallner, too.
Yep.
I mean, I just named half
James
the
Outman.
roster. Yeah, James Outman, too.
We discussed it.
I mean, honestly, that's almost half the damn roster.
Right.
And in one sense, I guess you can find promise in that, if half of those guys, let's say 5 or 6 of them, do take a step forward, do stay healthy, do kind of live up to the potential that they've shown at various points in the minors, or even in a lot of cases in a Twins uniform, then yeah, you can start to go, okay, I can see the vision of an 80-something win team. But also, those guys are in this spot for a reason, largely, which is that they have not done that. They have not stayed healthy. They have not been consistently productive. Some of them have parted ways from other organizations to come here. Some of them, like Alarnik, is seemingly on his last breath here with the Twins. And so, yes, if you're an optimistic fan and you say, well, half those guys are going to have really good seasons, and Royce Lewis is going to make an all-star team, and whatever it is.
Right.
Well, yeah, then you can see it. I'm not in position, having watched a lot of those guys over the last 2 years try and fail to meet those expectations, to assume that things will be different this year.
I'll go as far as saying I can see a reasonable number of those folks taking a step forward.
Sure.
And I still think you're kind of approaching a 500 team, right? Like, they need that to be not bad. Like, if they're all bad, we got a real problem. Now, on top of that, the other factor I was going to say is that, could make for an interesting season is behind those guys are a lot of other guys.
Yes.
And some of those guys, people were getting excited about in spring training as well. And, I think one of the things that we will be debating all season, I view it to probably be a major storyline throughout the season, is sort of like, which of these guys are we throwing aside for these other guys? And then, waiting for these guys to see if they're going to be, if these prospects are going to become post-type prospects, or if they're going to become regulars, what are they going to be doing, right? So
yeah, I mean, there's a, blank or get off the pot element to a lot of these guys who are no longer 23, 24, 25. They're 27, they're 28, they're 29. Like, this is the time to sink or swim. And yes, to your point, they have a good farm system. The majority of their top prospects are very close to the majors, and certainly by the All-Star break,
right,
there are a handful of them, if they are not already in the majors. I'm talking Walker Jenkins, Emmanuel Rodriguez, Kalen Culpepper, Connor Prelip, Kendry Rojas, Gabriel Gonzalez. I'm missing a couple here too, but if they're not already in the majors, Mick Abel is going to be in the majors. I'd even throw in like Alan Rhoden.
I was going to say maybe even Alan Rhoden, yeah.
Not technically a prospect, but you guys get the idea. I would expect throughout the season those guys to sort of transition in, either as their performance warrants it in the minors, like they force the issue by thriving in the minors, as injuries create spots, which is how Keishel got up last year. The infield basically died at the same time, and they called up Keishel. Or the performance of, let's say, Alarnik does not step forward, and they're sitting there 3 months into the season, and they're like, why do we need this 29-year-old guy with a 720 OPS in a platoon DH role where we know he's not going to be on the team in the future? Why don't we call up Gabriel Gonzalez, or why don't we get Emma Rodriguez playing time, or whatever it is? And so that is an exciting element from a future view of maybe this is the year where this current core, which has largely failed, starts to give way to at least a blending in of the future core, which may fail, may succeed. It's at least something to dream on, something, of promise. And I do think from a timeline perspective, we are going to see that this year. It's not a great sign, though, that they're still sticking with Larnick. Right. They're still choosing guys who have no options versus guys who don't. But yeah, I mean, I think two things about that. One, if this goes poorly in the first half, there will be another trade deadline sell-off.
Right.
And at that point, then there is no excuse not to just completely rebuild, turn this thing over to the next wave, part ways with any core, 27-year-olds who have any sort of trade value, and just move on with your life and try to incorporate the next wave. Yeah. But by the way, that team might be horrendous again down the stretch. So keep in mind when you try to figure out an over-under of 72.5, which is very, very low, by the way, lowest by the Twins in a dozen years, was we saw last year. What you have in your head as, let's say, an 85-loss team can very quickly become a 100-loss team for the final chunk of the season if they were to trade Joe Ryan or, Byron Buxton, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. There's sometimes an interesting year in between two different generations of players. It can go really, really well at times. For instance, 2006, was, the year where we kind of switched from the Minkiewicz, Hunter, that group, AJ Pierzynski, etc., to the Maurer, Morneau, etc. And what makes that interesting is like you get the best of one generation of the old generation sticking around long enough because they're good.
And they've become the veterans.
Right.
And then Torrey Hunter is now the veteran.
And then you get the best of the new generation because they're shining immediately. Right. We saw a little of that more recently in 2023. Right. We had sort of the older generation kind of sticking around for a little bit, and then we had the newer generation, especially because that was when Wallner was breaking through. We had Julian breaking through. We had a few different
Royce Lewis too,
and Lewis too. Yeah,
those three guys came up and carried that offense.
That's right.
Great.
Whereas you still had Koski and Polanco and
not
you're doing stuff. Huh?
Who are you thinking of? Not Koski.
Oh, not Koski. Kepler. Sorry.
Kepler, Polanco, Buxton.
Yeah. Kepler had a great second half of that year. So you can have these sort of generational things where that happens. So I think if you're trying to make a play for like this year, that's sort of like, okay, we don't need all of the post type prospects to hit.
Right.
We need 2 or 3 of them to really hit, and we need 2 or 3 of the other guys to establish themselves real fast, real easy. Suddenly Jenkins is a shining star or something like that. Well, you still got Buxton creating stuff, and Wallner breaks through, and Royce Lewis has the year we thought he'd have.
Those previous versions of that, and I agree. That to me is, having covered this team for so long and seen waves take over and different cores emerge. That to me is the most exciting element when it clicks. When you find that magic spot where the existing core is like 27 to 30. Some of them are all-stars. They're reliably good players.
Right.
And they're veterans too. And then you start to mix in these young guys, and a few of them thrive immediately. Right. And all of a sudden you just have a good team, but an exciting team where you can see the present, you can see building more for the future. But the problem is the prospects are supposed to be the unreliable, risky boom or bust guys. Not the 27-year-olds are not supposed to be the guys that you're like, I don't know, maybe they could be good.
Right. I mean, usually you've had guys who have established a certain level of experience, and now they're in it for like one more golden season or something like that, right? But you've seen, maybe even I see that in like 2015, 2017, the years that we kind of mentioned, where it's like, we still got Dozier hanging around. Right. We still got Buxton has come up. Sano is starting to establish himself. You got a little bit of carryover, a little bit of some of the best from the previous, and that I think personally, if I'm taking a look at going, okay, how do I take a look at this? I don't believe I'm going to go 11 for 11 on my post type prospects all coming through, but I don't need to, hopefully. Maybe I get 4 of them really kind of shining, and then I get a couple of these guys come up and they're like, oh, geez, look what Kendry Rojas can do,
Right.
Like
I agree. And that's what I'm hoping for. That is, if things go well, that is the version I want to see. Because I think that can equal a winning team, but more than that, it can equal a fun team and one that you can trend positively. But, the reality is, if this is not a season that's about winning, either to begin with or certainly at the trade deadline, if you haven't won and you start trading guys away, then what is it about? Like, what is to be squeezed out of this season? And there is never a meaningless season. Just as we talk about, there are never meaningless games down the stretch. I felt like last year the Twins missed an opportunity by not turning to more young guys and getting their feet wet in the majors and learning about them, and instead going with the Erasmo Ramirez types in the bullpen. And now look, they still don't have any sort of semblance of a bullpen because they didn't try anybody out in those roles. And so there is never a meaningless game or meaningless month, and certainly not a meaningless season. But what would this season be about if it turns out it's not about winning? Well, one, sifting through those 10 or 12 prime-aged guys that we talked about and figuring out, are there any of them that can be part of the next good Twins team? Hopefully there are 3 or 5, but are there even 1 or 2 that can be part of that? And then starting to transition in these prospects, whether it's right away, whether it's mid-season, whether it's after the trade deadline, and when you parted with guys. We need to see Walker Jenkins and Emmanuel Rodriguez and all these guys who have promise that have not been shown good or bad yet. That's, hugely exciting. Unfortunately, that's something that has become a common thing to kind of, lean on in terms of fan interest with the Twins, is like, well, maybe the next group is good. But you need to find that out either way. The other things that I think what is this season about if it goes poorly? A second fire sale is hugely important. We talked about all these guys now that they got in last year's fire sale, and I don't even think they did it that well last year's fire sale. If they do another one and you start to get even some bigger names, those are hugely important decisions made by potentially a lame duck front office of like, are we targeting prospects or are we going for AAA guys again like they did at last year's deadline?
To some extent, this season could be viewed as a referendum on last year's fire sale to some extent, right? Like if Taj Bradley and Mick Abel break through and are number 2 and 3 in this rotation and we're feeling really good about things, about that rotation, we're like, fire sale didn't turn out so bad, you know?
Yeah. Now, I'd like to see them think Alan Rhoden should be in the majors at 26 years old, for example. And then here's the last two things I'll say in terms of what this season could be about if it's not about winning. This front office, which has lost Falvey and Levine in the last 2 years, and now has Jeremy Zoll running things with a horde of assistants, to say their job security is not sound,
of course,
would have to be a complete understatement. None of them had ever worked with Tom Pohlad before. Their boss for the last decade parted ways, let's say, or was pushed out, whatever the case may be. The owner at least says he expects the team to be decent. You just did a fire sale last year where you handpicked your returns and leaned mostly into major league ready guys or at least AAA guys to contribute this year. So if this season is bad, if you're Tom Pohlad and you look at that front office and you go, well, why are their jobs like, what are we doing? Falvey's gone. Why are his second, third, fourth in command? We're just going to continue to let them guide this thing. And then here's maybe this creates some optimism. I'll throw this in there. Ownership. If this season goes poorly and they do another fire sale and they cut payroll again and attendance sinks lower, which is very possible, all this stuff from Tom Pohlad talking a big game is going to seem more and more absurd. It's going to put more and more pressure on them from a monetary and business standpoint to have to face the reality of how ugly this situation has gotten, largely because of their doing, how low fan morale is, how you can't just sell $2 beers and talk about Framber Valdez and get people back. You have to win your way back. I think they do recognize that. I'm not saying they're naive to that. But if this season goes badly and you start to trade away some of the big names and the salary gets to $70 million and, you know, the place is empty again, is that the point at which this family says, what do we need this? We thought we had already gotten to that point with them, right?
Right.
And I think the confluence of the potential lockout and the new CBA and the upcoming negotiations for all the local and national television stuff creates sort of a point at which, a decision point, a directional choice where maybe I'm being optimistic on this, but my hope is that the Pohlad, I know.
You are being very optimistic.
That the Pohlad, I'm being optimistic through my pessimism, really. That the Pohlads are just sort of biding their time. They got the hundreds of $millions from minority investors to pay down the debt. And my hope is that keeps them from losing significant money in the near term so that they can just sort of sit on their hands and do nothing. Let this season play out. Let the CBA get negotiated. If a lockout happens, whatever, they hope to come out on the other side. The Twins and teams like them and markets like them are maybe in a better spot in terms of revenue, in terms of payroll, in terms of television situation, whatever it is. You fold that into the team and it makes them a more appealing asset to some other billionaire who can swoop in. And if this season leads to that, and I agree with you, I'm dreaming on this, but I mean, more so than a Royce Lewis breakout, this would be the biggest positive impact. But if this season leads to a true bottoming out on the field and off the field for this ownership group and leads to them getting at the other end of a lockout and a new CBA and saying, all right, we're ready, let's do it, I'll take 110 losses for the long-term benefit.
Sure. I'll just add one as well. Derek Shelton is...
I feel for him. I really do.
I know. I do too. The job he has in front of him, and I actually think he's approaching it the right... It feels like he's approaching it the right way. It feels like he's going to work on getting the best out of things, best out of the players here, maybe even more so. He's certainly bringing a level of energy, I think, that position needs.
Sure. Oh, it's not a woe is me.
Right.
We may feel that about Derek Shelton, but Derek Shelton does not
Right.
feel. I mean, go listen to the hour he spent with us. Like every answer I thought was solid, but he's just being put in such a difficult position.
I mean, nobody that hired him is still there. I mean, maybe Jeremy Zoll. You know, he led the search and so on. But we got questions about his future as well, given things. So yeah, that whole leadership team is going to be watching very closely as to what's going on here. I think you are being optimistic on the way that the Pohlads would pivot if it's a bad year. I don't think they pivot into, oh, we got to get rid of this team. I think they pivot into, well, there's ways we can solve this, and that way is the way they've solved it for 40 years.
Okay, I agree. I get what you're saying, which is lower payroll even further. I guess I'm not saying the losses themselves, like 95 losses this year, I don't think would cause them to go, all right, forget it. What I'm saying is a further decline of attendance and fan morale and TV revenue and just overall interest, combined with what will hopefully be a better post-lockout, post-CBA situation for teams, could cause them to think, this is the time. Like, let's get out. Like, it's bad. Let's just, I mean, they were clearly thinking in that direction at the very least a year ago.
Right.
But yeah, I'm hoping for that.
I mean, maybe, what they ended up doing, the path they ended up choosing was more or less forced upon them, right? Which was, well, we can't sell it for what we think we can sell it for. So let's do the next best thing, which will get the partial owners in here, still raise some money, still raise some cash, reduce some debt, have some cash on hand, etc. But that doesn't mean that we can't go back to it if we need to. And maybe the everything around it at some point they will recognize, maybe we're just not very good at running this anymore. We don't have now. That I think is a tough thing for a person to realize,
especially I would say a third generation billionaire to realize,
right? And
because why would they ever assume that they're not good at something? They've been rich and powerful and famous their entire life, and everything they've ever wanted to do in life has been widely available to them. And why would your brain at some level, after 40 or 50 years of that, not just think, I'm so good at life.
Right.
I'm just, look at me.
Well,
and so, yeah.
It could be that they're like, well, the problem was we had Joe running it, and Joe isn't particularly good at running it. But now we've got Tom running it. And so, maybe at some point, Tom's like, yeah, this ain't for me. Maybe I'm not. It's possible. It could also possibly be that they're just like, this ain't for me.
I mean, I also just wonder, they brought him in as sort of a break glass in case of emergency. They took him away from their other. I wonder, is it his thought process of, I'm just going to run this for the rest of my life? Or is it his thought process as, this thing was sinking, I got to rescue my brother, let me get this thing back on track, and in my mind, sell it, or at the very least, just get it stabilized. And that, I mean, look, let's finish on this. That is the good version, right? Several of these young core guys who have disappointed step forward. The starting rotation is, in fact, a strength. The bullpen is just okay instead of my view of it being terrible.
Yep.
And
overachieve, just happens to get the right outs at the right times.
Yes.
Right,
and they take, let's say, a 500 or slightly better record into the trade deadline. You know what? And maybe attendance is a little bit better than expected. Maybe people are drinking up those $2 beers or whatever. And then you know what Tom Pohlad has a chance to do if that happens?
Invest.
Put your money where your mouth is and add pieces at the trade deadline and actually make a push with this core incorporating young guys, overachieving, and add relievers, add some position player talent, and make a push, let's say, for a wild card spot and prove that this is different ownership and this is different on the field. That's the good version. If you told me this season was a success, I think that's probably the most likely route to that. But we've been doing this too long to be naive and to think, oh, probably this Pohlad will be different. We've also already seen him, as he was learning this business, express
we've heard the narrative that about being aggressive only in the opposite direction, right? Similar to the we're going to sell stuff at the trade deadline. Right from the beginning, he was like, I want to be aggressive. I want to invest in this team. This is not the time to invest in this team. If he feels the aggressive move is to tear this thing down, and that could very well be the case. I have no doubt that he will tear this thing down.
Right. And look, it's difficult to sit here and say 4 months ahead of time. But if they are 5 games below 500 at the trade deadline, they should tear the thing down.
Maybe
they should get whatever they can for guys who are only either impending free agents or 1 more year left or aging core. Because if they're not good now, why would they be good next year with the same group and further monetary restrictions? This to me is a referendum on the choices they've made of the last 2 years or the last 2 off seasons of sticking with this core. And if it again flops, you cannot go forward with this same group and just expect Walker Jenkins to save you. And so I would almost put it this way. I want them to be aggressive at the trade
one
deadline.
way or the other. Right?
One way or the other.
Yeah.
To me, the worst outcome is
I think you're going to get your wish.
Well, yeah.
I don't think this is a half measure.
Well,
This could be a half measure.
He says he hates half measures.
Yep.
We've seen no measures so far. He's literally done nothing but talk.
We can't find the ruler. We don't know what he's measuring.
Okay. All right. There's our Twins season preview. Last little call out. First pitch of opening day. Our deal on Patreon will expire.
Right.
So you have until then. We would love to have you join us. You will get on average 2 exclusive commercial-free episodes per week that we publish just for Patreon subscribers. You will get all the interviews we've done. You get the entire hundreds of episodes archive. You get access to our private email account that you can use for mailbag episodes. We also have rotating guests of all the beat writers throughout the season. And actually, we have a pretty good guest lined up, a first-time guest that I'm very excited about, maybe a couple weeks from now or a few weeks from now, that you can get access to that too. And you can get 20% off the whole thing. You sign up, you go choose the annual option. You essentially get 3 months free. It ends up costing you like 65 cents an episode. You're paying us like $1 something a week. Stick with us all season. Good, bad, indifferent. It's going to be interesting for the reasons we laid out. And I would argue that leading in the next season is going to be really interesting for some of the reasons. We'll find out if I'm optimistic.
And if you don't want to even commit for the whole year, it's just $8 a month too.
Yeah, sign up
try it out.
For April. Why not?
Stick with us till the trade deadline, and then you can decide whether you want to join us for the full next year. Right.
Patreon.com/Gleeman. That's Patreon. And also, if you've enjoyed this show, whether for a month, a year, or the last 10 years as a free offering, it's a great way to just show your support for a few bucks here and there and get more of this show. So Patreon.com/Gleeman. Thank you, though, to our sponsors who allowed us to offer this show for free by sponsoring it, including our presenting sponsor, first and foremost, Blackstack.
Yeah, Blackstack, where you're going to be taking a half day Thursday anyway, right? why don't you enjoy some Blackstack beer over at Blackstack Taproom with Twins Daily, twinsdailysocialclub.com. That first pitch, when our offer expires, that's when probably we'll be doing some giveaways because that's what we like to do. We like to do first pitch. So twinsdailysocialclub.com to check out Blackstack Brewing and their fantastic beers. Otherwise, we will be back. Actually, we won't be back with a free show until a week from Friday. There's got another
reason to join the Patreon.
That's right. We've got a Wednesday show on Patreon with the over-unders. Friday, we will be doing a Patreon direct immediately after opening day to kind of talk through that entire game, what we see, what the lineups mean, everything else. And then we'll be back to sort of the Monday. We'll be back with a recap of the entire first series. Wednesday, we hope to have maybe special guests. And then we'll talk to you a week from Friday. Bye-bye. And welcome to the end of this video. There's lots more. For another, just click on one of these boxes.
Or click on this circle in the middle to subscribe to all of our Twins Talk.
Thank you.